If a 20-year-old version of me walked through that door right now, I'd sit him down and I wouldn't hold anything back. You know, I've made some good decisions in my life and I've made some bad ones. I've made some that have cost me years, some that cost me more than years. Today I want to give you the conversation that nobody gave me. 10 things I wish I'd known at 20. Not theory, not a list I found somewhere. My life, the hard parts and the good parts. If you're young, listen. If you're older, maybe share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Because most of what I'm about to tell you, nobody taught me when I needed it the most. Welcome back to Get Grounded. I'm Papa Todd. If you're new here, I make weekly content for men and women who want to be more capable in their life, more calm, more prepared for what life brings. So hit subscribe. Let's get into it. Lesson 1. Money. I grew up on a farm. You know, not all the chores were unpaid, and some of the work I did earn real money, and that money went into a bank account that I couldn't touch. I could watch it grow, but I couldn't spend it. My father provided the essentials. Clothes, not a lot, but enough. And anything beyond that, anything extra I wanted to wear, I could go buy it myself with my own earnings, within reason. He wouldn't let me buy anything lavish, anything foolish, or anything that would teach me the wrong lesson about money. What he was building without ever saying so was this: needs are provided and wants are earned. That's it. That's simple. A boy who watches a number grow without being able to spend it learns something that most kids don't today. That money has a relationship with patience. That the discipline of saving happens before the need arrives. I'm frugal to this day. I always carry an emergency fund. That habit, started by a farmer who controlled an account I couldn't touch, is still running in my house decades later. The concept, at least. At 20, I'd tell you this: know the difference between a need and a want. Make yourself earn the wants. Build an emergency fund before life makes you, and then you wish you had one. So start now, whatever the amount, no matter how little, just start. Lesson 2, health. Growing up on a farm builds you. I was above average strength, and that strength carried me. Whether it was football, sports, martial arts, I was able to excel a little bit in all of those things. I was capable, and I knew it. I didn't brag, but that confidence in my body was one of the best things that my childhood gave me. And it became one of the most expensive things I ever owned, because capable men don't stop. At work one day, I was lifting a stone that was a little too heavy, and my back went out. And I knew it was bad, but I kept working. I'm surrounded by other men who kept working through their pain too, right? That's what you do. That's what I was taught, and that's who I was. You know, years of compounding damage, working through the pain that was trying to tell me something, ignoring what I didn't want to hear about what was going on in my body. Eventually, that turned into spinal fusion. And it's never been the same since. And it's very frustrating, because to sit unable to do what my mind is capable of knowing how to do, understanding completely how to do, and that I've done many times before. You know, the knowledge is all there. It's all in my head. The skill is too. But the body says no one day. Here's what I didn't understand at 20. The same quality that made me exceptional, that push through it mentality, that refusal to quit, became the exact same thing that compounded the damage. The lesson isn't don't work hard. The lesson is know the difference between hard and harmful. I didn't know the difference when I needed to. You do now. Your body's the only tool that you'll never be able to replace. Work it hard, work it smart, and when something's telling you to stop, listen, because the day will come when it stops asking. Lesson 3, skills. My grandfather was a mason. My father was a mason and an entrepreneur. He had his own masonry company from the time I was maybe 3 years old. I didn't just visit job sites. I grew up on them. The smell of the mortar, the weight of the block, the rhythm of the work. It was just as familiar as the farm. So I'm a third generation Mason. And when my father's business expanded into land development and building, I started building homes when I was 18 years old. I was pretty excited about it. And, I'd been watching for a while, but I stopped watching and I started building. But here's what my father taught me that I didn't fully understand until many years later. He never let me master one trade. Just when I thought I was gonna, get real good at something and was finding my footing and feeling a lot more comfortable with it, he'd move me from masonry to framing to finishing to then remodeling and then plumbing and electrical, trade to trade. At the time I felt it. I wanted to go deep, but he kept pulling me wide. What he was building wasn't a tradesman. He was building a man who could see how everything worked, not just how one thing works. The journeyman knows his trade. The man who knows many trades can see how every decision connects to the next, how the framer's choice affects the mason, how the rough end determines the finish. I can look at any building and read it. I know what it took, what it cost, what was done right, and what was cut. That's not just a skill, it's an understanding. At 20, I'd tell you, learn a trade. Learn two. Learn enough that when something breaks in your house or in your life, and maybe in your community, you're the man that people call. Not because you know everything, because you know enough to help. The world needs specialists. But the man who his family never has to wait on, that man knows a little bit about a lot. Be that man. Lesson 4, character. When I was 13, our church started a Boy Scout troop. I joined. Most boys tend to join about 10 and a half years old in scouting. So I was already behind, but that didn't bother me. Didn't matter. I found something in scouting that shaped me alongside of everything else that my father and my church had already built. Citizenship, what that meant. Character. Service. Especially to those younger and weaker than yourself. Now, this wasn't just an idea. It was a practice. It was something you did. I excelled. I held numerous leadership roles and positions, and I pushed hard towards my Eagle Scout, but I ran out of time. I aged out before the requirements would allow me to, so close, but frankly, the clock just ran out on me. That didn't make me quit. I actually came back as the assistant scoutmaster to help out my scoutmaster. I knew he was struggling a little bit. He had a lot of pressure and he probably wanted to take a break. Then I went on to become scoutmaster at the earliest age eligible. Then unit commissioner over a number of troops. And then eventually assistant district commissioner over the entire district. And in my first year as scoutmaster, I was able to accomplish 1 Eagle Scout. And in my second year, 2 more Eagle Scouts, the first Eagle Scouts in that troop's history. I didn't need the badge to build it in others. I'll say one more thing about scouting. It's changed in ways I don't agree with. I believe it's made a crucial mistake in no longer being exclusively focused on boys. And I say that plainly, not with any anger, because it's earned. Because what scouting gave me, the character that it built, that hasn't changed. And that's what I'm passing on. So I tell you at 20, character isn't the award on your wall. It's what you build in the people coming up behind you. The man who stays when there's nothing left to earn, that's a man worth following. Be that man. Lesson 5, mentors. I was 8 years old when my father purchased a 160-acre farm. Too young to really be a city kid, but I wasn't a country boy. And then overnight, a completely different world. There were already a couple of tractors on the farm, and as soon as we arrived, I always wanted to try and drive it. I love driving them. I actually thought it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my life up at that point. That farm was mostly hay, so we'd cut hay, we'd rake it, we'd bale it. I rode on the side of the tractor while I watched my dad do it so that I could learn. It was fun. Pretty soon, I was able to take the controls and run it all myself. And after about 3 years, I'm a little slow. I realized I wasn't having fun anymore, and this was work. I was actually working. My father knew all along, right? You know, the lessons were just nonstop on the farm, and you didn't really know you were taking them in. My father taught me what it meant to put in a hard day's work, even when you didn't want to. I didn't want to a lot, and I worked a lot. Still, he was an incredible man. I lost him 4 years ago, but his lessons live on. His lessons are really the core of what this channel is all about. He is the driving force behind who I am. And I think that's exactly what a mentor is supposed to be. Not somebody who lectures you, someone who puts you somewhere in life and lets life teach you and observe while that's happening and advise you. So if I was 20, I'd tell you, find men who are further down the road than you, not men who tell you what to do and tell you what to say, want to hear themselves talk, but men who know things that you don't yet and are willing to put you to work learning those things. You need a mentor, not an algorithm, not a podcast, and not a comment section. A man. Go find one. And when you find one, pay attention. Because the lessons, they won't sound like lessons. Sometimes they sound like, get on a tractor. Hey, you want to ride that tractor? And then sometimes they sound like, go get to work. Lesson 6, relationships. You know, I've had a lot of friends throughout my life. Some closer than others. Some from early school days, but only a handful really had my best interest at heart. I learned that what you thought was your best friend would sometimes walk away over the silliest things, sometimes religion, principles, lots of different things, and beliefs. And those things can create division between people, absolutely. And others, I didn't give them enough effort. I didn't give some people enough time, and I should have. They left me isn't quite the right way to put it. Maybe the relationship just faded. Because that distinction matters. Because one asks for forgiveness and the other asks for honesty about how much you really invested. So after all these years, returning to some of those relationships and those people, it's been a blessing. Rejuvenate the relationship. But the reunion itself became the lesson. That time doesn't have to be a permanent loss. That going back is still possible in your life. That saying sorry, even when you're not really sure it was you who was in the wrong, is almost always worth it. At 20, I tell you, don't wait for relationships to fix themselves. Go back. Say you're sorry, even when you're not sure it was you who was wrong. The friendship's worth keeping is worth the discomfort. And the men in your life, the peers, your mentors, they're not optional. A man trying to do life alone is a man who hasn't been humbled yet. Find your people, hold on to them. And when you lose them, go back. Lesson 7, faith. You know, my earliest memories are memories that include church. You know, my grandparents went to church. Of course, my parents made me go to church. And I say 3 times a week at least. I was there. So faith wasn't a choice that I made as a child. It was the way I was raised. It was the water, the very water that I was raised in. And what I learned beyond scripture, beyond the denominational debates, and beyond the minutia that splinters so many congregations was something simpler. Give. Help people that need help. Show up. That was the primary lesson. And it's the one that stuck. You know, I've watched people get lost in the social side of church. You know, they go in to see their friends and wearing their best clothes, right? I've watched others just completely disappear into the fine print of scripture the details that divide more than they unite. For me, it was always about the relationship with God and how do I feel the Spirit, not the institution, not the denomination, but the relationship. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't always been good at that, but I've always been a principled man. And I've tried to teach those principles to my children. And I made a decision with my kids that I didn't have. I didn't have the option to make the decision myself. I let them choose their timing, when faith would come, when the Spirit would come. I didn't force it. I just lived it in front of them as honestly as I could. And I trusted what I believed in enough to let it speak for itself. About a year ago, both my sons were baptized. It's good to see they chose it on their terms. My daughter as well. Been a while. But when I didn't necessarily have an option in seeing that happen in their lives, I felt like I fulfilled something I really wanted to have for them. And at 20, I'd tell you this: anchor yourself in something bigger than your ambition, not necessarily a denomination, not a social circle, something real. And whatever you believe, don't confuse the institution with the relationship. Don't get lost in the debate when the point is the practice. Give, help, and show up. And if you have kids, live it in front of them. Don't force it. Just live it. They're watching more carefully than you know. Lesson 8, Fatherhood. This is one of the hardest. Before the divorce, we had the farm, had my kids, I had everything that my father had given me, including the blueprint to build a good life. And yet, unfortunately, I was chasing money, success, as I defined it. And I missed a window, a very important one. Those years on the farm with my kids, the same years my father had given to me, I didn't give fully to them when I had the opportunity. I was elsewhere in my mind, in my time. And then the divorce came, and it was unexpected. Probably shouldn't have been, but it was. And it ultimately took the farm away, and it took half my time with my kids away in a way I never could have anticipated, and I couldn't control it. That's the part that sits with me still. It wasn't entirely my fault. I'm not saying I didn't have some sort of blame in some of this, but the earlier choice to let money have more of me than my family did, that made the loss a lot harder, a lot sharper, made the regret heavy. Now we still have a great relationship today. My kids have learned a lot. They're very successful. I'm very proud of them. So the story doesn't end in ruin by any means, but the time I didn't give when I had it, I can't get that back. And then when something I didn't expect came along, it took even more of it. So if you still have time, use it. Don't wait for a reason to show up. Don't let work be the thing that gets more of you than your kids do. Because something that you never saw coming might go right ahead and make that decision for you. And there's no going back from that. None. So be present before life decides you're not going to be. Lesson 9, patience. We live in a world that almost anything you want can arrive in the mail tomorrow. Food, entertainment, answers, purchases, instant. And because of that, patience has become one of the rarest things that a young man can have. I remember I wanted a motorcycle when I was a boy, pretty young, and I wanted it bad, so bad. My father knew that, first off, that I was too young, I was too small. I wasn't ready, right? I was ready to spend my own money. I knew I'd saved up enough. Of course, I wanted a brand new one. I didn't want anything used. But one day, a motorcycle just showed up. Used, old, beaten. Didn't really like it at first, but you're not going to keep me off of it either, right? So, not exactly what I pictured is my point, not what I asked for. I was still happy. It performed just as well, and it was a challenge. Because even though I could ride it, if I fell, and I did many times, it would have to lay right there until Dad got home. I was just incapable of picking it back up. It was too heavy. Like I said earlier, I was pretty strong for my age, but not strong enough yet. The machine taught me what the weight had been preparing me for. I wasn't ready for what I wanted. And that old motorcycle proved it without saying it. You know, my first car followed the exact same pattern. You've probably had something like that happen to you. So save, wait, let it arrive somewhere close to what you wanted, and you might find out it was enough after all. And even now, at 57 years, I can still be very impatient, so don't think it's going to go away. But at least I have those memories and those lessons of the past to help quell those things in my heart. It allows me to give time some space, some freedom for those doors to open up and let it happen. At 20, I'd tell you to slow down. The things worth having don't arrive on your terms or your timeline. Save for them, work towards the goal. And when what arrives doesn't exactly meet your wish or your desire, if it's not exactly what you pictured, that's okay. Get on it anyway. Fall off of it, get up, fall again. Because the gap between what you wanted and what you got is usually the exact size of what you still needed to learn. Lesson 10, legacy. I want to tell you about two men. The first was my father, successful entrepreneur. Early in his life, he was very successful, built a lot of things. He'd been all around the world. These were real things, though, that he built. Businesses, land, a farm. He put everything he had right back into those things so that he could build and control them. But he ended up dying before he could actually enjoy his retirement, before he could step back and see what he built and see what it had all been for. He left something I'll be able to benefit from now, but he never got to. The second man was my next-door neighbor's father. I grew up alongside his son, my best friend Ben, and his dad was a financial advisor, a pastor, a man of real substance. And our friendship was one that eventually faded when I got married. But his father continued to support me and reach out. And when I needed financial advice, he'd be more than happy to provide it. It was presence when it mattered, right? He passed away right before Christmas last year. And I attended the funeral, and I saw my childhood friend there and his kids. I saw the entire family, and then I listened to the eulogies and as his grandchildren spoke. Now, this family was a very well-to-do family. They very successful, highly successful people. They had great lives and pretty much visible to anyone who was in the room. They could sense that blessing of life. That wasn't the contrast that I felt, because it wasn't about money for me. It wasn't about success in that way. What his grandchildren said was much simpler. He showed up. He would travel long distances to be there for their events, for things that were moments in their life that mattered to them. The presence, that was what they remembered. That is what they said out loud at his funeral. Nobody asked him to say it. I sat in that room listening, and something settled on me. Knowing that my grandchildren are still very young, that full presence hasn't happened just yet, but it's the beginning, and that is my opportunity. And I hope to continue being there for them in that same way. I don't know what my grandchildren will say about me one day at my funeral, but I know what I want them to say. Not that I built things, Not that I worked hard, not that I was successful, that I showed up, that when it mattered, I was there. That's the legacy worth building. Start now while you still can. So, what's one thing you wish someone had told you when you were 20 that you had to learn the hard way instead? I want to hear your story. Leave it in the comments for me, because your answer, this is important, it might be exactly what someone needs to hear or read today. Until next time, get grounded, stay steady, and get ready. We'll see you next week.